What's up, everybody? Derek Anderson, the DA, and yes, the fallout from Morbius continues, and it couldn't have happened to a better film. Because straight up, I don't think that this movie had a lot of care and consideration when it comes to the folks down at Sony Pictures. I could be wrong, but it just didn't come off that way, and we're now starting to see a lot of folks kind of getting a little antsy about, hey, you know, why are they ripping this film apart so much? Like this guy here, we're going to go through this article real quick, just to kind of discuss, criticism of comic book films, right? Let's go ahead and get into this because I think you guys like this article. It's pretty hilarious. So he starts off by saying, well, let me read the article topic. It says, Morbius and when the critical consensus bites. There's nothing wrong with having legitimate criticism or not liking a movie, but the reaction to the poorly reviewed Jared Leto started months before it even opened. And there's a reason for that. There's a reason why this movie was getting heavily criticized before it even opened, and I'm going to get to that. But let's start off with his first statement. What do we want out of comic book films? We want good movies, okay? That's what we want. We want good movies. See, think about this, and this is something I think that this guy and a lot of other folks who think that there's some sort of a conspiracy to rip down this particular movie, here's something that they don't understand, okay? Back in the day, like you go back into the early 2000s, and I've already discussed that this film feels like an early 2000s film, we had a lot of bad comic book movies. There was the occasional shining star, like you had the Spider-Man films, of course, you had a couple of X-Men films that really laid the groundwork. Blade, of course, those were the kind of okay, these are good, these are really decent films, good movies, okay, they kind of laid the groundwork. And then what happened is in 2005 you got Batman Begins, right? Okay, that set the standard, took it up a couple of more notches, and then you came out in 2008 with The Dark Knight and Iron Man, right? So both of those films came out, and now we have a much higher standard, or at least say this is the ceiling, okay? Now we have a higher ceiling than we used to have, right? Dark Knight was a great film, and it set the bar super high. Now you're talking about comic book films right after Iron Man came out. Then you get the MCU phase 1, okay? And what came out of phase 1 is a couple of decent other movies, okay? I think The Incredible Hulk is, good movie, mostly shaky, but still good overall. But you had two very solid, very good quality films in Thor and Cap TFA, all right? Both of those two films, good, solid entertainment, all right? So now we've established kind of a standard, okay? In my opinion, like, it doesn't have to go, we obviously have had greater films than Cap TFA and Thor. You're talking about, The Winter Soldier, you got Civil War, Ragnarok is a lot of fun. Of course, you have the Avengers films. Like, those are sitting up there at the very top, right? But right around the middle, it's like, okay, these two films right here, and those came out in 2011. Both of those films are like, hey, you know what, this is about what all comic book movies need to be. We don't want to go back down to Daredevil and Punisher Warzone and all this other trash, Ghost Rider. Hey, and everything won't hit Avengers and Avengers Endgame and Infinity War. We understand that, but for the most part, it needs to be right around that Thor Cap TFA level, right there. That's a solid, good, respectable comic book movie. So what do we want out of that? We want all of the movies from that point on to be that. Yeah, some will dip a little bit below, some will dip a little bit higher, but we want them to be mostly that. So let's keep going about this article. Okay, so it says here, it's a question I've been grappling with recently, particularly not because much of my writing revolves around those two movies. I don't have superhero fatigue, not even close, but I am fatigued by so much of the discourse surrounding these movies, the bad faith arguments, preemptive ratings, and tribalism. Okay, now a lot of folks will say, yeah, this is all tribalism. This is all people just trying to rip this movie down because they're DC fans or because they don't like, Sony. There's good reasons why folks don't like Sony, but I'm going to discuss first the tribalism, okay? Let's face it. Comic books have always had a rivalry, okay? There's always been DC and a Marvel rivalry. That's existed from way back when, okay? And I actually was looking at this. You can find, articles all over the internet about this. But Marvel and DC have always had a rivalry, and that also is translated to their fans. So what do you expect to happen when you start making a lot of comic book films, okay? That same rivalry is going to come out in the fandom across films. So now it's rising up to the level of films. It's not just in comic books where people are mostly like, I didn't really read comic books anyway. now it's getting out here, it's becoming more mainstream. Don't get upset about this, okay? This is part of what comic books have always been. There's always been a rivalry. You can read this article. This came out like 5 years ago. It's on CBR.com, and it kind of goes into like, you know, it's talking about like how Stan Lee was like, you know, jumping up and talking trash about DC, and then you see DC coming back. Look at this. In case a certain web-headed character thinks that I am stealing his thunder, I'd like to remind him I was changing into all sorts of weird shapes long before he walked up his first wall. I mean, you had like artists and all of that deeply into it, and it goes on and on. There's a lot of stuff up here. The Bat-Hulk. You know, DC was coming at Marvel pretty hard, and then Marvel would come back. You know, here's a little thing by Marvel. They're talking about who says a comic book has to be good, not brand X. They were talking about DC. You know, these are rivalries that have existed from the very beginning when it comes to comics, okay? Comic books have always had a rivalry, and especially DC and Marvel, and that definitely flows right into the fan base, okay? The fans also get involved with it. Nope, DC is better. Nope, Marvel is better. This character is better than that character. All of that has always been a part of the comic culture. Don't get it twisted, okay? That has always been there. So embrace it, okay? Oh, I don't like seeing all these fans fighting online. Well, too bad. Don't talk about comic book movies, because that's what this is, okay? We've always had these rivalries. I'm a DC guy. I love my Marvel brothers out there, but we are going to talk trash against each other. It's just like sports, okay? Bears fans will go up against Packer fans, and we'll go hard at them, and then Packer fans will laugh at us, and you know, so on and so forth. But nevertheless, that is always been a part of the comic culture. All right, so let's continue. So if these movies are going to continue to be our most popular form of entertainment, and they are, which by all indications, blah, 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 then we need to take a step back and reevaluate why we even like these movies to begin with and what our expectations are. Why do we need to step back? We don't need to step back on anything, okay? You know who needs to take a step back are the people who are making these films. You don't want to get ripped apart, make a good movie, okay? Because it comes to Morbius, and I haven't even gotten out of the first paragraph, and I'm already getting heated. When it comes to Morbius, Sony straight up cobbled together a movie with spare parts, okay? They didn't put the effort in. And if you don't put the effort in, expect to get trashed. This has been a problem for Sony going all the way back to the Amazing Spider-Mans, okay? Remember, those two movies, okay for the first one. The second one was trash, and the fact that Sony's Morbius is getting dog walked up and down the internet, that's Sony's problem. That has nothing to do with the fans. All right, let's keep going. So he's talking about how, yeah, he's disillusioned by Morbius and fans aren't giving him a shot. You know, it maintains Morbius, a film that maintains the spirit of the 90s comics I grew up reading. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't, whatever. But the bottom line is that this 15% on Rotten Tomatoes, this is earned. This is well earned, okay? Because they tried to come in and said, hey, we're gonna put a piecemeal script together, all right? We're gonna get this director, hey, come on in here, and they're gonna make this studio cookie cutter kind of film that was just, and it was exactly what we expected, okay? The trailers looked bad. So when you talk about this thing started months ago, yeah, because the trailers looked bad months ago, all right? Months ago. So nobody was fooled by this. Nobody was coming in expecting this to be good, and they got exactly what and in fact, in me, I came in expecting this to be bad, and it was worse than what I thought. This is the reality of the comic culture right now. Sony has nobody but themselves to blame for this. All right, so let's keep going. You know, and you know, they made some comparisons to Josh Trank's Fantastic Four. Now, that is an exaggeration. This thing ain't that bad, okay? It's not that bad. But it was always dubious, right? It was always going to be a dubious film for the very reason that it's Sony, all right? Nobody trusts Sony. They've done this time and time again. And just because they linked up with Marvel and came out with a couple of good Spider-Man films, that doesn't mean anything, okay? That doesn't mean anything, because we know if Sony is on their own and they don't have good people standing side by side with them, like I said in my review, I figured, hey, you guys got Marvel standing side by side with you, and they've been doing this for the last, 6-7 years. Like, what are you doing? How are you messing this up this badly? But anyway, let me keep going. All right, so he says here, I simply cannot place my faith in reviews and opinions from critics and audience members who have spent months wishing for the film's failure, went into theaters looking for things to hate, and then handing out half-star ratings on Letterboxd while admittedly they've never seen it, and upset that Spider-Man doesn't show up in a movie that's not about him. Look, they put Spider-Man in the trailer on a poster in the background as Morbius is running by, a scene that's not even in the movie. Okay, so they're the ones that stuck Spider-Man in our faces to make us think, hey, is there a possibility Spider-Man might be in this thing? Okay, that's again Sony. Don't blame the fans. Okay, and then you had that terrible post-credit scene where again you got Michael Keaton, that's Adrian Toomes sprinkled all throughout everything. They didn't miss a single trailer where they didn't have him featured. Okay, and that's going back to 2 years ago when they first announced this film. They were putting him all throughout the trailer. And then guess what? Oh, he's a post-credit scene at the end, and it's the dumbest post-credit scene that anybody's ever seen. All right, so yeah, he says yes, hate is that popular. You know what? It's not hate. It really isn't hate. It's not hate. What it is reality. Okay, Sony has dropped the ball with this particular character, and this is a beloved character. Spider-Man is one of the biggest, most beloved characters of all time. Okay, and they mishandled him when that in that Amazing Spider-Man series. Okay, and you can see what happens when they don't hire. Hey, you don't have Sam Raimi making these things. We in trouble. You don't link up with Marvel in the MCU on these other Spider-Mans. You know what? We're a little nervous. Okay, that's exactly what it's coming off as. I'm sorry, you know. And if Sony doesn't like it, or if this guy doesn't like it, you know, maybe he needs to sit at the big table like I was talking about with Sony and say, hey, here's some ideas to make this thing better so we don't have this problem again. But most of this article is really just this guy being butthurt over the fact that people are ripping this particular movie apart that he liked. And again, that's number one, that's part of film. It's just the way it is, especially in comic books. It's always been that way in comic books. Yeah, are there going to be fans that are going to, you know, have an agenda? Maybe. That group of fans is a small minority compared to legitimate fans that have legitimate opinions. Okay, you know, and the thing about Marvel is why, well, you know, everybody just praises everything that Marvel has done. You know, he kind of gets into that somewhere in this where he's talking about, oh, you know, everybody's praising Marvel, everybody's saying that Marvel's doing a great job. Well, Marvel's done a great job, and they have purchased that equity. Okay, they have bought that equity with great film after great film after great film, and then, like I said, they've set a standard of decent filmmaking that we have kind of, as a collective group, have said, yeah, I think I want all of my comic book movies to be at least on this level, and if they can get better than that, great, but if they can't, at least on this level, that's what we're wanting. Okay, but here's the interesting thing. Okay, brings up this little conspiracy theory. Where is it at? Here it is. So there are agendas at play with Morbius reactions beyond simply liking and disliking a movie. Taking pictures of how many seats have been sold to create an idea that no one is seeing it, claiming anyone who liked the movie was paid, hanging the film's quality on its April 1st release date, and telling folks to boycott the film so Disney can buy Spider-Man and all related characters have been prominent on social media. True. All of that, I've seen it. I was giggling and laughing at it myself. I don't think there's any chance in the world that Sony's ever going to get rid of Spider-Man. It is one of the biggest properties in the world. Why? There's not enough money that you could offer Disney to sell this property. Not enough. So if anybody was hoping that that was going to happen, yeah, you're kind of fooling yourselves. But the fact that Sony cannot handle this property is really the issue. It's really not the fans that don't like the nonsense that they're seeing. And the thing about it is, Morbius, in and of itself, is a character that is a decent character. Nothing wrong with the character, but it's a character that, you know, you just can't throw out there unless you have very, very solid writing and directing and acting. Everything has to come together perfectly. Take Guardians of the Galaxy. You know, people say, oh, you know, Guardians of the Galaxy proves that any character can be made and you can do anything with any character. Hold up, wait a minute. James Gunn is the reason that Guardians of the Galaxy work, okay? It's not the character. You're absolutely correct. It's not the characters, because there's been bad Batman movies, and Batman is the most popular character in the world. No. You have to have a good director that understands the characters, knows he has a plan, he knows what he wants to do with this. This thing, again, feels super generic, like they didn't have any idea of what they wanted to do with Morbius. None whatsoever. And so when you come up and say, hey, we just need to make a Morbius film, we don't care how it's made, we don't care who makes it, we don't care what story you tell, we don't care if this thing is good, bad, or whatever. When you come out and have that kind of attitude towards making a film, expect to get ripped apart, as the fans are rightfully doing. Thank you, fans, for ripping this thing apart, because guess what? that's going to be the thing that actually changes the comic book film and entertainment overall. When people say, hey, you know what, this is trash, I don't like it, I'm gonna say what I want to say, you know. And we should as fans. We are the market. We're the ones they're appealing to. Tell them what you think, and don't be shy about it, okay? And if people don't like it, too bad. Tell them, hey, Sony, make a better film. Sony, make a better film. That's what you need to tell them. That's it. So anyway, this article is on the Hollywood Reporter. You can kind of read through it. He gets in a couple of things that I do, you know, he makes some points that I do agree with. Yeah, right here. He says, this isn't to say that Morbius is perfect. There are pacing issues, underdeveloped relationships, and questionable rules of science and supernatural, but it's simply a lie to suggest that Marvel Studio has never made enjoyable films with those same issues. He's right. There's been some bad Marvel films, like some really you know, Thor: The Dark World, right there. You know, we talk about Iron Man 2. Yeah, that's not that good. Those are movies that have some of the same kind of issues that Morbius did. But like I said, those films was made back in what, 2010? You know, 2011, 12, like back in the earlier parts of the MCU. We are now 10, 12 years later. We have had example after example after example of how to do these movies right. Like I said, James Gunn, Guardians of the Galaxy, he knocks that one out of the park because he understands how to tell good stories. He has a style and a presence that says, hey, push this thing out here and my vision is going to work. He has a vision, okay? He's not some studio coming in and saying, we just need to do this movie. No, he had a particular vision on how to execute all of these particular characters in a certain way so that this thing would work overall. And it was one of the better Marvel films for that reason. So yeah, I agree that there's a lot of Marvel films that have the same flaws, but and it says here, yet anything outside of Marvel just gets harsher criticisms. And again, like I said, Marvel has bought itself that equity, okay? They have bought themselves equity, so we give them the benefit of the doubt, okay? And we're gonna be a little bit kinder because we like the universe and the way that all of this stuff fits together. We enjoy it. So far with Sony, we've gotten Venom, Let There Be Carnage, and we've gotten Morbius. That's it. And all of those films have been less than the Thors and the Cap TFAs. They have been less than that. Now, Venom was just a little bit down underneath that. This film is in the gutter. Sorry, you know, but that's just my opinion. Now, folks, let me know what you think. Do you think that, you know, criticizing comic book films, you know, for whatever reason, you don't like it, you don't like the way Sony makes films, you know, if you want Marvel to, you know, purchase Spider-Man back from Sony, it's not going to happen. But, you know, what do you think about this guy's take? Go ahead, jump down in the comments. Let me know your opinion on this. All right, that'll be it for this random rant. I want to thank you guys for watching. If you haven't done so already, I really would appreciate a subscription. Really helps out. Definitely see more and more folks subscribing, so I really appreciate that. And I want to thank you for watching. See you next time.